Hello and welcome to episode 2 of A House in France, recorded on the 8th of December 2010. My name's Mark Johnson. Welcome to this podcast, the show where we look at all aspects of owning a house in France. Now, I'm not going to be the only one who hosts the show. I have a co-host, and Lloyd is joining us via Skype. So good morning to you, Lloyd, and any news of what's happening over in France for you?
Hello and welcome. From the last episode, there's been no further developments on the planning approval, which is still currently with the Mayor's office. However, if there's no objections within the 2 months, they're pretty much approved. So I'm told. Anything happening with your place, Mark?
Well, we haven't been out there. We were somewhere else recently. But we have had a little bit of a development in that we've had a gas tank installed. Luckily for us, our neighbour was on hand and supervised the burying of the tank. So the tank has been buried in the garden, about 3 metres from the house. So this will allow us to have some central heating installed at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future. I think we might touch on this later on in the episode. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at where people buy in France and the things that should be considered. And we're calling it location in that old estate agent's adage. And we're not just going to talk about, where, what department or what region that you're buying in. Obviously, that is important. But also things you need to think about on how remote you are or how busy it is. As an example, we wanted somewhere remote, which is great. We are literally in the middle of nowhere. Lots of advantages, very quiet, etc. But if you run out of sugar, the round trip is about 30 minutes. And if you want something like a box of screws or something to finish some project, the round trip is a minimum of an hour. Or if you want to go to a large store, it's a couple of hours round trip. So there's sort of things that I didn't think about that initially. And probably for the first few weeks we were in France, I spent half of every day going out and buying things for the work I was doing. Now, Lloyd, you're having a house built, and hopefully you'll get your planning approval soon. What sort of things did you think about when buying down in the Aude, isn't it? Is that where you are?
Yeah, that's right. One of the things that we looked at was the travel time and the ease of access from the UK. It's important, especially if you're thinking of renting out, for instance, how difficult or how easy is it to actually get to your property. So we chose somewhere that is fairly easy from an access point of view, especially from flying, which I'm guessing a lot of people will take that as their main sort of point of travel access. I believe you had some travel issues this week, Mark.
Yeah, I did. I didn't go to France. We actually went to Spain last weekend for a big family occasion. And with all the snow that we've had, and in fact, France is experiencing, we were held up with 8.5 hours spent at Southampton Airport. So I think it was a good thing it was a family occasion, that I might well have turned around and come home. One of the other things that you need to think about is what your budget is and where you want to buy. If you want a place on the coast down in Provence. That's fantastic, and as long as you have the fantastic bank balance to go with it, people obviously looking for a good value, good price when they're buying in France. A lot of Brits are currently buying in the Limousin. That's seen as being a very good value area. A lot of properties available for well under €100,000 even now. So you've got to work out what your budget is. And that has obviously an effect on not just the size of property, but on the areas that you can look at. So, what other things should people think about, Lloyd, when looking to buy a place?
Obviously, one of the main criteria is the climate. 2 weeks in south of France is fine for a summer holiday. But when you're living there, you've also got to think about the winter. So as well as being prepared for summer, nice parasols, deck chairs, etc., you need to be prepared for winter. As we found out here in the UK, where November has seen the highest amount of snow in 30 years. I have a friend of mine who has a place in the south of Spain where I went to visit fairly recently, and they have seen snow in first time in 60 years. Anywhere is possible. Have you had any weather problems in the Dordogne?
We've had a few challenges. I remember the first winter we were there, took the family out. I think it was the second time they'd been down to the place, and we arrived just after Christmas, -7 outside, +1 in the house. Luckily, I'd installed a wood burner a few weeks beforehand, but even with that, it was a good 2 or 3 days before the house warmed up. And this is another good point. If you're going to be visiting it in the winter, what type of place is it? If it's a modern place, it'll probably heat up pretty quickly. Maybe you've got it'll have central heating and you've managed to keep it on, or somebody switches it on for you. We have an old farmhouse, 2-foot thick stone walls. When those walls get cold, they stay cold for a long time. And if you haven't got central heating and just got a wood burner like we have, it takes a few days to warm the place up. And you also get a lot of condensation coming off the stone, something that I hadn't seen before. So talking about climate and that, Lloyd. So have you're having a new house built. So what are you looking at from a heating perspective, or are you considering air conditioning at all?
We're basically looking at electric-based heating, air conditioning. One of the advantages with a new build is the heating and the sort of thermal characteristics of the property tend to be much better than the older stone-built houses. Also, we're having, as with Mark, we're having a wood burner installed, which makes for quite a cosy property as well. One of the restrictions we have is that with the village, we're not allowed to have solar panels. So that's one thing worth bearing in mind when you look at buying your property. There are various other options, such as ground source heat pumps, but I won't go into that in detail. We'll put some links on the website for you there.
Yeah, I think in a future episode also we'll look at maybe some of the different types of heating and air conditioning, etc. And it's a shame you can't have solar panels. They're becoming, I would say they're probably more popular now in France than they are in the UK. Obviously, when you're looking at an area, one of the things that we noticed, because we spent quite a few weeks looking for a place, is we often went and sat in a coffee bar, in the area, just to get a feel for the area. And we ruled some places out because there were too many Brits around. So that can be great, and as we've mentioned in episode 1, a very useful source of information, the expat community. But you might want to be a little bit more, a little bit further away from the main centres of the expats, or maybe that's what you want, and that's great. I just think that it is something to be considered. Obviously, when you're putting, you're building a place, you do your finances. A lot of people look to help pay for the place with through rental. And so, if people are looking to rent the place out, Lloyd, what are things that they can be thinking about there?
From a rental aspect, it's obviously location is very important. Is it in a holiday? Obviously, looking about the plot, etc. Opportunities are there within easy reach of your property. For me, I've got the options of skiing. There are 3 skiing resorts within sort of 30 minutes away. The Pyrenees. There's whitewater rafting. There's cycling. The beach is less than an hour away if you prefer that sort of thing. Spain, which is if you're driving, it's about a 2-hour drive. You can even get to Barcelona by 45 minutes by the fast train. And one of the other options, also from a rental perspective, is having a pool, which it makes it more attractive to rent, and also gives you a higher rental income.
So I think what we're saying, I hope we've given you a few things to think about. I mean, do plenty of research. I think to spend time in the area, talk to people in the area, and work out what you're going to use the property for, when you're going to use it. So hopefully this has been useful. Now, there's a lot of information on the web, and we'll put some websites in the show notes. And there's one particular site that I've been looking at and have found useful recently, and actually did a survey on where the French like to live. So let's have a quick look at that now. And the site is l'Express.France, and the link will be on the website. And as I said, they actually did a survey, and they broke the survey down into 4 areas. It was the area for generally that people thought was a good place to live, place for young people, place for families, and then a place for as they nicely put it, for seniors, for those who are a little older. And they list the top 3 in each. In fact, they list all the departments in there. So let's go and have a look at just the general one. And they actually move down. They have a map, and let me just do that again. They have a map, and they list them all in their in order. So that's some interesting information there. Now, while we're just looking at this particular website, here's a tip for you. If you go into Google, and I've typed in the L'Express in the Google search bar, and normally you just click on the link. For those of you who haven't used it before, there is Google operate a translation option, and this is is not too bad. If we just go and look at the normal website, it says here clearly snow and ice. There's an orange alert in 27 departments. They're having the same sort of snow that we are, and they've had a few deaths, etc. Unfortunately, and if you were to click on the Google Translate link, it just translates the page for you. Snow, ice, orange alert, etc. I would just point out that this isn't it isn't perfect, the translation, but it really can help you. I while I can normally scan the web and web pages and get a fairly good idea, sometimes there's a word that doesn't quite work out, doesn't ring true. So do be a little bit careful with it. But there's a tip for you, which we hope you'll find useful. So that's it really for this episode. We'd like to thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us in the next episode of A House in France. You can contact us by sending us an email to ahif@ttfn.tv, and we look forward to seeing you in the future for another episode of A House in France.